For Perth Wellington.
Mr. Speaker, today's Comeau decision shows once again that the status quo is not an option. Canadians believe they should be able to share high-quality Canadian beer, wine and spirits across provincial boundaries. But pages upon pages of exemptions on alcohol and secretive working groups shows that the Canadian Free Trade Agreement has failed consumers and has failed local businesses. Will these Liberals commit today to allow direct-to-consumer sales of alcohol across the country?
The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Innovation and Science.
Mr. Speaker, I can assure the honourable member that from the get-go, the Minister for Innovation, Science and Economic Development has been a leader in getting the provinces to sit down and negotiate the Canadian Free Trade Agreement, an internal free trade agreement that will eventually reduce, Mr. Speaker, through the working group, the tariffs, the internal tariffs on beer and spirits and wine. Mr. Speaker, we believe in cooperative federalism. We believe that the solution to this question of freer movement of beer, wine and spirits resides in getting all of the provinces to sit down together and to come up with a solution. That's what we're doing.
Well, member for Perth Wellington.
But, Mr. Speaker, the fact is the Comeau case shows that these Liberals really aren't committed to internal free trade. In fact, the working group that the Parliament Secretary cites has met a number of times, but they won't reveal any details because the government says it would be injurious to federal-provincial relations. How bad are these meetings going that even releasing the names of the attendees would be injurious to federal-provincial relations? And the Attorney General herself argued against Mr. Comeau at the Supreme Court. Will these Liberals finally stand up for local businesses and consumers, show an ounce of leadership, and free the beer?
Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, I guess the question before the Supreme Court was to free or not to free. That was the question. They came up with their answer, Mr. Speaker. Our approach, Mr. Speaker, has been the same from the get-go. We are working with the provinces. Unlike the members of the opposition, Mr. Speaker, our approach respects provincial authority and provincial jurisdiction. Our minister has shown leadership in getting the provinces to sit down and put together a Canadian Free Trade Agreement, and that agreement will eventually result in the free movement of beer and spirits, but only when the working group reports and the provinces agree.
Honourable member for Foothills.
Mr. Speaker, a true Canadian Free Trade Agreement offers an incredible economic opportunity. It will create jobs and improve consumer choice. Interprovincial trade barriers are crippling Canadian businesses, costing our economy $130 billion. Instead of fighting for free trade, the Liberals are stifling growth, piling on debt, and imposing an unprecedented escalator tax on beer, wine, and spirits. Will the Prime Minister commit to renegotiating a true Canadian Free Trade Agreement? Will he axe the tax? Will he free the beer?
Secretary to the Minister of Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, members of the Harper Conservative government had 10 years to negotiate a Canadian Free Trade Agreement. They did absolutely nothing.
Term, they would have got it. One more term.
Mr. Speaker, our minister has led the provinces. We do have a real, true Canadian Free Trade Agreement in place. That agreement provides a mechanism through a working group to provide for the freer movement of beer and spirits and wine across Canada. That's the result that we are seeking, Mr. Speaker. That's the approach we've taken from the get-go.
The honourable member for Mégantic-l'Érable. What do Quebec City's La Chouape, Canmore's Grizzly Paw, and Grand Prairie's GP Brewing have in common? That is that they're excellent Canadian beers made with homegrown ingredients brewed right here at home. Unfortunately, not all Canadians have access to these products because this government has failed to achieve a true free trade deal between provinces and territories. An estimated $130 million is lost on account of interprovincial trade barriers. When is the government going to renegotiate the deal and free the beer? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Trade. The Conservative approach was different, but ours was to respect provincial jurisdiction, the authority of the provinces, and to undertake an approach of cooperative federalism. And that's what we're doing. Our minister has shown leadership has brought the provinces together around the table to negotiate a domestic free trade deal. That's what we have been doing, and that is what we will continue to do.